rate by klali, as it pertains to the sugyas of oisay ve'espinai. So, the Mishnah, in the beginning of the parak, after it introduced the basic idea of oisay ve'espinai, said ketzad. Ketzad, how does oisay ve'espinai play itself out? And the Mishnah went and gave 12 different scenarios, juggling cases where the animals were chulin, kachim, where the shchitas happened, bifnim, meaning in the azara, or outside of the azara, and what the halacha would be in each one of these cases. The first of the 12 cases was the most obvious and the simplest. Mishnah said, Ketzad hashoichet oisei ve'espinoi chulin bachotz. In the event that both of these animals were chulin, and both shchitas took place bachotz, so the halacha is shneim ksherim. Both of these animals are going to be kosher, meaning you'll be allowed to eat the meat of these animals. And as it relates to the second one, you're going to be soiv zarban. This is the classic case of oisei ve'espinoi as it relates to chulin. Very, very straightforward. This is not in Yerushalayim. It's not Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash HaYakayim. It's in the Zman of the Chorban. Somebody goes and he shechts two animals that are chulin, oisei ve'espinoi. You want to eat the meat of the animal, you're allowed to eat the meat of the animal. However, the second person who did the Ma'aseh Aveira, he's going to get malchus for what it is that he did. Rashi in the Mishnah, Dibra Maschel Shneim Ksherim, says, Mishum debai lemisna seifa Shneim Psul. Being that in the course of the Mishnah is going to mention, in the other 11 cases, times where if you shecht an animal in a scenario of oisei ve'espinoi, the meat of the animal is going to be pasul. So it's for that reason, but derech agav, we mentioned in the first case Shneim Ksherim. In other words, Rashi was bothered. Why does the Mishnah say, Hashoichet oisei ve'espinoi chulin bachut shneim ksherim? Why would you think they're not kosher? What would be a siba to say it's not kosher? Of course the meat is kosher. It's true the second person was over an aveira. He was over oisei ve'espinoi. But why would you think that the meat should be suddenly aser ba'achila? So Rashi, there's no reason in the world that you would think it. There is no havamina at all to even suggest something like this. If that's the case, why did the Mishnah say Shneim Ksherim? The reason the Mishnah says Shneim Ksherim is because the Mishnah is going to mention a lot of cases where the meat is going to be pasul. We did shchitas chutz, we yeshechted chulin b'fnim. There's going to be a lot of cases where there's going to be psul. So agav, we're going to mention cases where the meat is going to be pasul. So we mention over here, we state the obvious that this meat is going to be kosher. Tosfos on Daf Pei Amud Aleph, which is really shaykh to the Mishnah, but Tosfos on Daf Pei Amud Aleph brings Rashi, and Tosfos says, I respectfully disagree. The reason the Mishnah said chulin bachut shneim ksherim so kedaita, because I could have had a havamina the mifsal sheni, that maybe the second one should be pasul mishum lo yisoichal kol toyeva. Keda'ama beperak kol abasa, the Gemara Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph. The Gemara Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph brings a drasha from a pasuk in Dvarim Yud Daled Gimel that says Lo yisoichal kol toyeva, and we learn from there that anything that was noitzer, any basar that came about be'isr, the halach is you're not allowed to eat. If that's the case, Tosfos, it's partially why the Mishnah says Shneim Ksherim, because we're bavarning that for whatever reason that lav of Lo yisoichal kol toyeva doesn't apply, and therefore the meat is going to be kosher. So Zokt Tosfos that Rashi said Shneim Ksherim, there's no chiddush, it's all mentioned, but derech agav, I disagree. There is a chiddush. The chiddush is the sheni. The sol kedaitach the mifsal sheni, because you were over the isra oisei ve'espinoi when you shechted the sheni. Kamash malan that you're not going to be over the isra. Now, even according to Tosfos, there's something that's being mentioned with derech agav, because the Mishnah says shneim ksherim. So the second one is a chiddush that you don't say lo yisoichal kol toyeva. But I'll kopanim, once I needed to say that the second one is kosher, so I'm going to say only the sheni is kosher. That's not true. The first one's also kosher. So it's for that reason the Mishnah went ahead and the Mishnah said shneim ksherim. In Chedushi Reb Kiva Eger, so there's a Hagah that it says on the Banim is Mitalmid Echad. It was written by one of the Talmid Reb Kiva Eger, and he brings, printed in Chedushi Reb Kiva Eger over here, Chulin Daf Ayin Chesem and Aleph, that he heard from his Rebbe a different Mahalach to explain what the Chiddush is, why you would have thought that if somebody shechts oisei ve'espinoi, maybe the halach is it shouldn't be okay. And it's based on a well-known sugi in Shas, in the first parak in Masechtes Tmura. It's a machlokes Abaye v'Rava. I kol milsa da'avid rachmana lo yisavid. I avid mahani or I avid lo mahani. This is a machlokes Abaye v'Rava, like The machlokes yish shaloi midas have yish aloi have yish is a machlokes abai for Rava. This is a global machlokes which comes up in the world of Reid, literally in Kol HaTorah Kula. Anytime the Torah says you're not allowed to do something, if you go ahead and you do it anyways, Yavid Mahani or Yavid Loi Mahani. So Reb Kiva Eiger said that Rashi and Tosfos are both mutching. What's the chiddush of the Mishnah that if somebody shechts oisev esbenoi shneim bachutz, the halacha is shneim ksherim, it's pashut that it's kosher. So Reb Kiva Eiger, it's not pashut because the second person that went ahead and he shechted, he was over in Issa Deiraisa of oisev esbenoi loisa shchatu b'yom echad. So I would have thought that kol milsud amar achmano leisav and Yavid Loi Mahani, the Torah would say the shchita is not a kosher shchita. That it's going to be kosher. Now there's a longer version of this Reb Kiva Eiger which ties into Reid that we spoke about in the beginning of the Masechta and Daf Yudal Ramad Aleph Hasheichet b'Shabbos Afa Pisha Shchitasik Sheira Harezim Eschai Benavsha in the Veltz Kasha. Why don't you say Yavid Loi Mahani? Reb Kiva Eiger is mafalful in this. It's a very geschmack Reb Kiva Eiger in light of Reid that we spoke about in this Chabur already. Iron Sham. But the bottom line is Reb Kiva Eiger says a second mahalach to explain why it is that you would think that maybe if someone's over Oisav Esbenoi, the Shechita should be a Shechita Psula. It's based on the Shas Sugya of Kol Milsa Dam Rachmana Loi Savid I Ovid Loi Mahani. In other words, Rashi said Shneim Ksherim, the whole thing was mentioned with Derech Agav. Tosfos and Reb Kiva Eiger are both being Megalatas. No, could be it's not so Agavdik. Could be there's a Chiddush. There's a Chiddush in the Shechita of the second animal that you would have thought maybe the boss is going to be puzzled. Tosfos said based on a Gemara and Kuftes Vav Amar Aleph, it's a lav in the Torah Loi Soichal Kol Teyeva. Kiva Eiger said based on the Shas Sugya of Kol Misal Dam Rachmana Loi Savid I Ovid Loi Mahani. Stating that, if you take a look at the Rambam, and the Rambam is right in the beginning of Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Shchita. That's where the Rambam discusses the laws of Oisei Vespenoi. Hashoichet Oisei Vespenoi b'yoyim echad, habasam mutar b'achila. If somebody shechts Oisei Vespenoi b'yoyim echad, the basa is going to be mutar b'achila. V'ashoichet loike shenema Oisei Vespenoi loise shchatu b'yoyim echad. Ve'inei loike ela al shchitas ha'achrein. It's only the second person that gets malchus. V'chulei v'chulei v'chulei. The Torah in Siman Tez Zayin brings L'shoinei Azov Shal HaRambam. And the Bach in the Zagah on the Torah says that from the way the Rambam presented the halacha, it sounds a little bit like the Rambam held that there's a chiddush in the fact that if someone shechts oisei vesbenoi, the mutter or the basar is going to be mutar b'achil. Now says the Bach, I know Rashi, Tosfos already discussed this, but from the Dakus Haloshin of the Rambam, I think I see a little bit more. Because the Rambam says, Hashoichet oisei vesbenoi b'yoyim echad, habasa mutar b'achila. The Rambam doesn't say the basa of the sheni is mutar b'achila. The Rambam says, basa mutar b'achila. It sounds like all of the basa. Side the Rishon, side the Sheni. And it sounds a little bit, says the Bach, that the Rambam holds that there's some chiddush over here that I need to tell you, that not only is the basa of the Sheni going to be mutar b'achila, but the basa of the Rishon is also going to be mutar b'achila. And says the Bach, to me this is a Tmiyah Gedayla. In other words, we spoke out that Rashi was mefarish in the Mishnah. There's no chiddush at all in the fact that if somebody shechts oisei vesbenoi, unless there was shchitei chutz or shchitas pnim, that the boss can be mutar b'achila. Why would you think it's also b'achila? And even though the Mishnah said shneim ksherim was only mentioned b'derech agav, even Tosfos that went ahead and Tosfos said no, there's a chiddush. Tosfos said the chiddush is shchitas hasheni. That is l'shoinei azov shel Tosfos. But that there should be a chiddush that the boss of the Rishon. And by the way, even Reb Kiva Eiger's time of Kol Milsa Dam Rachmana Lisavid Yav Lamian, that's all in the Sheni, where you are over the Isser. But the Rishon, which was done beheaded, there's no chiddush in the world that should somehow be also that I would need to tell you it's mutter. The Bach saw in the Rambam, very subtle, that the Rambam says habasa mutar b'achila. He didn't say the basar hasheni. He said the basa is mutar b'achila, which sounds like all the basas mean mutar b'achila. And the Bach wonders out loud: is the Rambam trying to tell me that there's a chiddush saying the basar of the Rishon inside the basar of the Sheni? The Maisa the Bach says it's mistaber that this is not a diak, and the Rambam is probably just quoting the Lashon HaMishnah Kedarke B'Kodesh, and the Torah is quoting the Lashon HaRambam. Everyone's just quoting everybody, but the Torah is quoting the Rambam, who's quoting Rabbi Yudah Nasi. So the bottom line is, it could be there isn't such a diak to be had, and whatever pshat in the Mishnah is, that's going to be pshat in the Rambam. But the Maisa the Bach mutches a little bit. It sounds like a basar mutter in the Bach's Havana of how the Rambam should have presented this halacha. He felt that there was a little bit of a diak here, and if that's the case, definitely something worth exploring a little bit. Is there a tzad to say that I could have had a havamina, that in the world of Oisnei Vesbenoi, not only the basar of the second animal that I shechted should be mutter, but maybe there's even a chiddush that the basar of the first one is mutter as well. So I saw in the Sefer Mishnas Maseches Chulin, that's from Agoyin, Rabbi Somer Garbuz, and this is in Perek Lamed. He has a whole perek on the lumdus of understanding Oisoi ve'esbenoi, and as he speaks out there, it's yitachin that once you come to understanding a little better the lumdus, how Oisoi ve'esbenoi works, it would be a little bit of a pshat in the Bachstik and the Rambam, and really a completely new, albeit simple havana in this love of Oisoi ve'esbenoi le'seshchatu b'yemech. Yesh lachkar, as it relates to the love of Oisoi ve'esbenoi, what is the cheftza, using that word very, very specifically, of the Isser? Is the cheftza of the Isser that when you shech the mother, now the Torah says the child becomes a chaticha d'isura, or when you shech the child, now the mother becomes the chaticha d'isura, as if to say that when a person is over, Oisei ve'esbenoi le'seshchatu b'yom, the guf ha'isser is shechting the child. After you shechted the mother, obviously. The gufa is shechting the mother after you shechted the child. Oyesh loymar, the cheftza of the Isser, Oisei ve'esbenoi le'seshchatu b'yom is, don't shech the mother and the child. It just so happens that if you only shech the mother, then it's not in play yet to have the Isser. Or if you did shech the mother, then it's not in play yet to say don't shech this, because I'm allowed to shech this. It's only once I shech this that I'm not allowed to shech that. But the point is that when somebody goes ahead and shechs Oisei ve'esbenoi, the Isser that he did was not just that he shechted benoi, the Isser that he did was that he shechted Oisei ve'esbenoi. What's the Isser? The Isser is shchitas benoi noch Oisei, or the Isser is shchitas Oisei ve'esbenoi. It plays itself out the same way. It's only a shaila lumdus. It plays itself out that after you shech Oisei, you're not allowed to shech benoi. And by the way, only the person that shechs benoi is going to get malchus. We're not debating that. But the question is, what is the gufa Isser? What's the cheftza of the Isser? What's the gather of the Isser? Pick your cliche, pick your cinema. What is the Isser? The Isser is shchitas benoi la'achas shchitas Oisei, or the Isser is shchitas Oisei ve'esbenoi. The truth is, from the pshutei shel mikra of the pasuk, it sounds a little bit like the Isser is don't shecht Oisei ve'esbenoi. Oisei ve'esbenoi lo yiseshchatu b'yom echad. It doesn't say don't shecht benoi after you shechted Oisei. The gufa Isser, the proverbial Oiseichal chazer is Oisei ve'esbenoi lo yiseshchatu b'yom echad, which sounds like Oisei is included, part and parcel of the cheftza of the Isser, in as much as benoi is included and is part and parcel of the Isser. Oh, but this is l'chayra, a very basic Chakira Hiddua in the world of Oisei ve'esbenoi. Is the gufa Isser not to shech benoi after you shechted Oisei, or is the gufa Isser not to shech Oisei ve'esbenoi? So Rabbi Somer Garbuz said, I'll bring you kama v'kama rayas that the gufa Isser is not just not to shech benoi after you shechted Oisei, but that the gufa Isser is not to shech Oisei ve'esbenoi. Just mention a few. In the Sugyet's Mavur, that the Gemara needed a pasuk to teach me that the Isser Oisei ve'esbenoi is true. Lo yishna if the same person shechted Oisei ve'esbenoi, and lo yishna if one person shechted Oisei and another person shechted benoi. Fragt Rabbi Somer Garbuz, l'chayr b'muschel rishon, what's Pash Pshan that havamina? Why would you think that the only time there's an Isner to shecht Oisei ve'esbenoi is if I shechted Oisei, now I'm not allowed to shech benoi. But if you shechted Oisei, I'm allowed to shech benoi. What's Pash Pshan? L'chayr, the Isner Oisei ve'esbenoi is that once Oisei was sheched, now benoi becomes a cheftza of Isner. So nobody should be allowed to shecht it. If you go into the time of the Kra of the Ramban, and Pirush HaTorah, and the Rambam and the Meira, again, there's no Havana. What should be the chilik? Whether one person shechted both or if two people shechted both. But if you're going to tell me that the cheftza of the Isser is Oisei ve'esbenoi lo yiseshchatu b'yom echad, that one person's not allowed to go ahead, and that you're not allowed to go ahead and shecht Oisei ve'esbenoi, so then there's makom to say that the only time this Isser is going to be true is if one person did the whole Avera. Because if Reuven needs a chatzi zayis of chazer and Shimon needs a chatzi zayis of chazer, it's not mitzvah to an Isser. So it's pashut, there would have been a havamina that you need one person to go ahead and shecht Oisei ve'esbenoi. But if two people are going to shech Oisei ve'esbenoi, there's going to be no way in the world. There's going to be no way in the world to go ahead and make us out starfus from the fact that we need a limud to tell me that there's an Isser Oisei Ves Benoi, even if one person shechted Oisei and the other person shechted Benoi, that's a Raya L'Chayra, a very stark netiyah to the tzad, that the Isser Oisei Ves Benoi is Sai Oisei and Sai Benoi. Therefore, you would have thought that one person has to do the complete Isser. But one person would shecht Oisei and the other person would shecht Benoi. Each person is doing a halb b'maisa, a half plus a half. In this world is not going to be mitzdarf to a whole. A second raya, or a second ha'ara. There's a big discussion in the Achronim. If somebody goes and he shechts oisoi ves benoi bevas achas, is he going to be chayiv for the issa oisoi ves benoi or not? The two shchitas happen vas achas. Are you chayiv or you're not chayiv? The Tvu Shor in Siman Tezayim brings a raya from a Rambam that we spoke a lot about last week. The Rambam in Perik Yud Beis of Hilchos Shchita, that's where the sugis of Oisei Ves Benara, Halacha Yud. But the Rambam says, Mutter lishchait behema muberes. Why? Because Uber is Ever Me'imai. Straight to Tvu Shor. If you're going to tell me that it's Aser to Shecht, or that there's no problem of Oisei Ves Benoi when the Shchita happens b'vas achas, so why the Rambam even have to bavarn that it's mutter to shecht beim muberes? And he's coming to be mechadish, you don't have to worry about this Oisei Ves Benoi. When you shecht the mother, that is the Shchita on the Uber. So it's one ma'isa Shchita. So it's Muchach said the Tvu Shor, that as it relates to this Oisei Ves Benoi, it's true whether it happened b'vas achas or it happened b'zeh achazeh. Zogen the Gedolei Achronim, that l'chura, bishloima, if you're going to tell me, that the Isser of Oisei Ves Benoi is don't shecht Oisei and Benoi, meaning Oisoi is part and parcel of the Isser, just like Benoi is. So it makes sense. Mali if I did it b'zeh, Mali if I did it b'vazachas. But if Oisoi is really not nichlal in the Isser is to shech Benoi after you shechted Oisoi. If I shechted b'vazachas, Benoi never became a chaticha d'Yisura. When did it become a chefz of Isser that I should be over now? It only becomes a chefz of Isser after I shecht Oisoi. I shechted Oisei and Benoi b'vazachas. Now the truth is, this is really totally in a sugya of kol sheyeshnoi b'zeh achar zeh. Kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh, afilu b'vazachas enoi. Right? This would be a good example of that, because I wouldn't be able to shecht one after the other. So if that's the case, it could be afilu b'vazachas enoi. But Kiyadua, there's a big Reb Chaim on this. It's not pashut that you always say kol she'enoi b'zeh achar zeh, afilu b'vazachas enoi. So the fum riyata, from the fact that you see that Tvu Shor is grace raya from the Rambam Mashoichem Uberes, that the halacha is that if you're going to go ahead and you're going to shecht the Oisei Ves Benoi b'vas achas, it would be included in Oisei Ves Benoi. It's probably because the Isser is Sayan the Oisei, Sayan the Benoi. It's not that it's only the Benoi becomes Asa and that the Benoi becomes Asa la'achas shchitas Oisei. So for that reason, Mali if it was b'zeh achazeh, Mali if it was b'vas achas. There's another Raya, Gedoyla, that the Gedolei Achronim bring, and that's from today's daf. Today's daf, the whole second half of the daf, the fun part of today's daf, discuss Shita Sumchas in the Mishnah. Shita Sumchas in the Mishnah, which Rashi says is really Pamayim Bahava, but we'll mention the second mention of Sumchas in the Mishnah, in the event that somebody went ahead and shechted a grandmother, and then a granddaughter, and then afterwards went ahead and shechted the mother. So according to the Chachamim, you only like Arban. According to Sumchas, you're going to be like Ishmael. The Gemara had a tzad, a very stark tzad. In fact, it's Shitas Rav Yosef in the Sugya, that the side of Shita Sumchas is, it's because Sumchas holds, Achal Shnei Zeisei Chelev, Behelam Echad, Yichayev Shtayim. So that, although in the case of the Mishnah, there was only one hasra, but at the same time, it's no different than one hasra, and you ate two kezaisim of chelev, where the halach is that you're going to be chayav. Freg Reb Elchanan, freg Reb Shlomo Hayman, freg the Gedolei Rosh Yeshivas. They all ask, Mamish Keish Echad, Belev Echad, Behelam Echad, they all ask the same kasha. And that is, I don't understand Pashup Pshat in the Gemara's Sushtel, Achal Shnei Zeisei Chelev Behelam Echad, to the halach of Oisei Ves Benoi. In the case where a person ate two Zeisei, again, this goes to the core of understanding a little bit of the lumdus of today's daf. If somebody eats two Zeisim Behelam Echad, or if somebody would eat two Zeisim and it was done with one hasra, he did two averos. He ate this kezayis, he ate that kezayis. there were two heftzes of Averis that he did. Being that there's two heftzes of Averis that he did, there's mokum to say you should get Malchus twice. The kash is there was one Hasra, good, Achal Shnei Zei Sei Chaylev, Behelem Echad Yechayev Shtayim. But there are two Averis. What are the two Averis? I ate this Kezayis, I ate that Kezayis. In the case of Oisei Ves Benoi, in Sumchis' case, you shechted one Behemah. How were you Chayev Malchus twice for shechting one Behemah? There's one Cheftz of Isser that you did. You shechted one Behemah. There's two Sibis. That's like very falam of it. Mechatesi. The Gemara comes with a fum riyata with this massive tzushta. So, you know, Pshat and Sumchas is, Achal Shnei Zei Sei Chaylev Behelem Echad Yechayev Shtayim. Mechatesa, that's a tzushta. Mechatesa, that's a tzushta. Over there, you ate two kezesim of chaylev. Over here, all you did was you shechted one animal. Abazog in the Rosh Hashivas, that's true if the cheftza of the Isser of Oisei Ves Benoi is, it's just the second animal that you shechted. So if that is what the cheftza of the Isser is, I shechted one animal. One animal. I hear it's a good order. How can I be chayiv two malchus, one animal? Either with two asrois, who cares? I still shechted one animal. But here alam this. If the way Oisei Ves Benoi works is that when I shecht Benoi, kum tois, Oisei Ves Benoi was the Isser, and it gloi milsa that when I shechted Oisei, I also did an Aveira. That's part and parcel of the Gufa Aveira. Then it's Pasha Tetzushtal. Because when I go ahead and I shecht the mother, so it comes out, I'm doing two sets of Aveiras now. Now with Gloi Milsa, the Baba and the mother was an Aveira. And now with Gloi Milsa, that the mother and the Enoka was an Aveira. Where it's how the two Cheftzes of Aveiras is in the Gloi Milsa of Afreya, then now the grandmother and the granddaughter were also Maisa Aveiras. If, however, nothing is being Chal in the grandmother and the granddaughter, they're not included in the Cheftzah of the Isser. So all I did was one Shchita on the mother. One Shchita on the mother is less than Ochal Shnei Zei Sei Chaylev. Over there, at least I ate two Kazaisim of Chaylev. Over here, I didn't even need two Kazaisim of Chaylev. And the truth is, just from the Gemara's Tushtal, that the Gemara calls it Gufa Mechlakim. Right? The Gemara had it said throughout the sugya that is an element of Gufa Mechlakim. So Rashi says it's two sibas of Isser. But Lefia now, the Gufa Mechlakim is much sharper. It's not just two sibas. Oh, this mother is Asr mitzad the shchita of the grandmother and Asr mitzad the shchita of the granddaughter. When you shecht this mother, now there's a gufa isser of grandmother, mother, and there's a gufa isser of mother and granddaughter. It's actually chal in gufa machlakim. It's not just two sibas. That's what Rashi learns the sugya. It's more than two sibas. It's actually chal. But the bottom line is this havana of Oisei Ves Benoi, it's a shchat b'yemecha that the gufa isser is not only in the benoi, but it's also in the oisnei. This is the hanachas even apin of understanding the lumdis a lot better. Zog in the Gedolei Rosh Hashivas over here in today's daf and chulin daf pei beis amid beis. Another murder the Geraya. The Chassam Sofer, right here in the Sugya, on Daf Pei Beis, he asks a bomb kasha. He asks, that why isn't it? Mishnah said that if somebody would go ahead and somebody would shecht the grandmother and then the granddaughter, and then he would shecht the mother, so what's the halacha? The halacha is that according to the Chachamim, you're only going to be chayev arba'im, but according to Sumchis, you're going to be chayev shmeinim. Freit the Heilige Chassam Sofer. L'chayra, why don't we say ein iser chalal iser on the second iser? Bomb cash. When you shechted the grandmother first, the daughter became aser. There's an iser da'iraisa of oisei ves benoi lois neshchatu b'yaymecha. Now you're going to go ahead. You're going to shech the granddaughter. So what do you want? That the mother should be aser because oisei ves benoi is shchatu b'yaymecha. It's already aser because of oisei ves benoi is shchatu b'yaymecha. Fake the heilige Chassam Sofer. It's ein iser chalal iser, and he muches does the Chassam Sofer right here in the sugya with this kasha in Chedusha Reb Shloima. In the back, so there's a whole list of Ksovim V'Tshuvas. In Ksovim V'Tshuvas in Siman Lamed Aleph. So he brings a teretz that he heard from the Afike Yam's son. To this kasha. The Afike Yam asks this kasha, and the Baal Mechaber of the famous Litvische Sefer, Afike Yam, his son wrote a Haggah on his father's Sefer, and who was Mechaber to the Chassam Sofer's kasha. One who said in the Sechal Alisser, and he said Moirdik. He said, Bishloim, if you're going to tell me that the way Oisei Ves Benoi works is, the Isser is only on the Benoi. That's what the Torah is telling you don't do. If you shecht oisai, now don't go ahead and shech benoi. The gufa iser is the shchitas haben. So then it's a murder kasha. The shchitas haben became asner when you shechted the baba. So how's it becoming asr again when you went ahead and you shechted the einichel? But if the iser meikara was oisai ves benoi loiseschatu b'yom echad, that don't go ahead and shecht oisai ves benoi, the iser benoi was not nischadish after you shechted the mother. When you woke up in the morning, there was an iser. Don't shech this oisai ves benoi and don't shech that oisai ves benoi. There was no one iser that was chal before the other iser as mezon zog and yet ein iser chal al iser. If the iser is only not to shech benoi, that is his first chal after you shech oisai. But if the iser is on oisai and on benoi, when's that iser chal? When you have an oisai ves benoi, that second, when this behemoth was noiled the mazel tov, at that point it was chal the iser oisai ves benoi. It doesn't pass now to go ahead and to say ein iser chal al iser. The bottom line is, if you go through in this Sefer Mishnahs, Masechtas Chulin, from Rabbi Samar Garbush Shlita, he brings kama v'kama rais. This is all from Gedolei HaRosh Yeshivas, where they all named on this tzad. And that is that the Issa Oisai Ves Benoi, like the Pshutei Shal Mikra, it's not that after you shecht Oisai, now it's Chal Issa don't shecht. No, the Issa is don't shecht Oisai Ves Benoi. And really the Issa is on Oisai in as much as it's Benoi. Now in the world of how the Einish, how the Malchus plays itself out, it's only the second one that gets Malchus, like the Rambam says. Hashoichet Oisai Ves Benoi b'yom echad. When it comes to the Malchus, it's only the Shchitas Achron that's going to get Malchus. But as it relates to the Gufa Isser, the Gufa Isser is true for the Rishon. The Gufa Isser is true for the Sheni as well. But the bottom line is, Lefiza Yesh Loimer. The Mishnah said that if somebody shechts Chulin Bachutz, the halach is Shneim Ksherim. Rashi says, Chulin Bachutz Shneim Ksherim, it's Pshita. It's Agav, the rest of the Mishnah, where you're going to have a bunch of cases where there's going to be Psul. So that's why we mentioned over here Shneim Ksherim. Tosfos says, no, you don't have to say that. There's a Chiddush. The Chiddush is that the Sheni is kosher. Why would you have thought the Sheni is possible? It's because you would have thought that maybe Loisoichal Kol Toyeva, so Kamash Malan, that you're not going to have an Issa. Now the first one, and Chinami, that's only mentioned B'derech. But we mentioned that the Bach was Medayik in the Lashon of the Rambam. Hashoichet Oisei Ves Benoi b'yom echad Abbas Amut, it's mashma, side the boss of the Sheni, side the boss of the Rishon. And the Bach Mutches in the Rambam. What's the Chiddush in the Rishon? Tosfos was megalatas what the Chiddush in the Sheni might be. Oh, but what's the Chiddush in the Rishon? Zok Rabbi Samar Garbush Shlita, that Yesh Loim, that we mentioned earlier, Reb Kiva Eger. Where Reb Kiva Eger said that could be, you could say a Numa Halach of why there's a Chiddush over here Shneim Ksherim. Because so Katay the Chaminu Kom Dil Sadam Rachmad Oloi Saveri Avad Loi Mahani. Kamashmon that even though you're over this Oisei Ves Benoi, still the halach is it's going to be good. And if you're going to nemon in Lundis that the Isser of Oisei Ves Benoi after you shech the Sheni is not only on the Sheni, it's on the Rishon also. The Sheni is the only one that's loika. But as it relates to the Isser Sayin the Rishon, Sayin the Sheni, then there's mokim to say that if you would hold Kol Mil Sadam Rachmad Oloi Saveri Avad Loi Mahani, once you shech the Sheni, even the basar of the Rishon should be aser, because the Avad Loi Mahani is true for anything that's included in the Gufa Isser, and the Gufa Isser is true for the Rishon, and it's true for the Sheni as well. Kamash Malon the Mishnah. Zok the Mishnah Shneim Ksherim. Not only the Sheni is kosher, the Rishon is kosher. They're all kosher. Why would you have thought the Rishon and the Sheni are both possible? Because I would have thought Kol Misudam Rachmad Oloi Savri Avloi Mahani, and that's what the Rambam was coming to say. Hashoichet Oisei Ves Benoi b'yom echad Habata Basa Muta B'achila. Even though Sai the Oisei and Sai the Benoi are included in the Gufa Isser, what the Torah said, Oisei Ves Benoi Tzishchata b'yom echad. So both of them were in violation now. Now, all the Einshim are only on the Sheni because you can't punish the guy when he did the Rishon. It was a halba ma'isa. Can't get punished for the halba ma'isa. Oh, but Gloy Milsalam Afreya, that Oisoi was part of this Oisoi Ves Benoi L'Nishchata b'yom echad. And if that's the case, I would have thought maybe it should be Pasul, Kamash Molan, that for whatever reason we don't say Kol Milsadam Rachmad Oloi Savri Avloi Mahani. That's the Chiddush Shneim Ksherim, Sai Shneim Ksherim, the Sheni, Sai Shneim Ksherim, the Rishon, based on Reb Kiva Eger's Teretz B'Shem Talmud Echad, and taking the one tzad that seems to be the ikr tzad in the Rosh Hashivas as relates to the Chakira Hayadua in the sugya of Oisei Ves Benoi.